Hi there. I have had the most fun sewing weekend this past weekend because I opened my scraps drawer and I was trying to put some new fabrics in my fabric drawer and things are just overflowing a little bit. And I've talked about fabric storage before, and my philosophy is when the space you fill with fabric is full, it is not time to get more space for fabric. It's time to use the fabric. So I have tried to eliminate scraps in various ways in the past, and it seems to hardly make a dent even. So I decided to challenge myself to make some little quilt blocks with only the scraps in this drawer that I'm about to show you. So I organized scraps both by size and by color, and it's been really fun because by putting some parameters on the project, I feel like that is so often where the most creativity comes from, and I just had the best time this last weekend sewing up 50 green and yellow Wonky Four Patch blocks. Let me show you. This is my stack of the green and yellow bin, and this is 50, and it's only a few hours worth of work. Like, it goes so fast. I timed myself, like I had 30 minutes before church, and I made 9 blocks I made 9 blocks in that small period of time. So today I'm going to show you my scraps, kind of show you what I'm doing, and teach you how to turn your scraps into a Wonky Four Patch block as well. I'm Nikki, this is Pin Cut, so let's get right into it. Okay, so this is the scrap drawer I'm talking about. These are where my smallest scraps go, and I did this a couple years ago when I was working on my wonky house quilt. I had all these small scraps, but they were fabrics that I really liked and I didn't want to toss them. So this is how they're starting. This is my blue and purple bin. This is my pink, red, and orange bin. This is what I'm left with after I did this with my green and yellow bin. So this is the first time I've stumbled on a scrap project that actually made a huge dent in the scraps. So today I think I'm gonna pull out my, let's see, what do I want to do next? Yeah, I'll just go with the blues. I'm gonna pull out the blue bin. I also keep purples in here, but I don't have as many purples, so they're gonna be mostly blue. Let's see if we can get this bin to look more like this bin. But first, I also have fabrics in here, and these are like my not big enough to go in this drawer, like really usable for bigger projects. These are smaller pieces, but not small enough to go in that drawer. So, and then back here is my holiday fabric, which honestly this year I probably also need to come up with a solution for that because I am a huge sucker for Christmas fabric, and like something needs to give because I just collect it and I don't, like, it's hard to do something that makes a dent in it. So I am also going to try to plan future projects very soon to make this, because this used to just be this bin and now I've expanded it into this area. So I do have some thoughts on using some of this up too. I'm going to talk about that at the end and then make a whole nother video about that. And then of course some of these too, because I'm having to really squeeze new fabrics into here. Like, I just got some of the new Starry colors by Ruby Star. I'll link you to this line of fabric. I don't always buy designer fabrics, but I really love the Ruby Star. And then I also got this Heather Ross ballerina nutcracker print. My daughter's a ballerina, so I had to. Okay, but let's get started on this scrap quilt. Okay, whenever I'm working on a scrap quilt that I'm going to be back and forth to the machine constantly, I got to get properly set up. I like to have a wool mat and a mini iron right here next to my cutting space, and then in my tiny sewing room I turn right around and there's my sewing machine. Let me just show you. So here's my cutting desk, here's my sewing machine, and I do have a stool, but I'm going to shove it under here because my desk raises up in height. I have it up most of the way so that I can just pivot from cutting to sewing to pressing. This setup really keeps me in the flow because I'm not having to sit and stand and sit and stand and travel very far at all. So if you have a sewing machine with any table space next to it, then another option is to put your wool mat and mini iron and then your cutting mat on your sewing table if you have room. So whatever works for you. So I decided to go with 3.5 inch blocks. I started out making a 4-inch one or two, and then I realized that for these small pieces, I would just be able to use a lot more of them if I could make it a tad smaller. So these are 50 green and yellow 4-inch blocks. I mean 3.5-inch blocks. I also toyed with the idea of just doing each color and making like a baby quilt per color, but I was liking them so much that I decided to make a big quilt and keep it. So, okay, so this is pretty simple. I start by just picking out some larger pieces. So there's one, and I love going through these and seeing my old favorites again. Okay, here's a piece I can use. It might be too small. Yeah, that one's too small for this. Wow, I have a lot of weird shaped blues because I use them for my fish quilt, so they're all curves. Okay, this one will work. So I have straight edges here. I'm going to just really quick go sew these together. I'm going to press the seam, and now I need to make some more straight edges. They don't have to be perfectly straight. They only have to be just big enough to be able to put together in another way and still get 3.5 inches. So now I can reverse one. Let me make sure I'm going to have enough usable space. Yep, so I'm going to go sew these together so that the selvages aren't going to be part of the block. Now I have this. This one turned out to be pretty square actually, but they will become wonkier as you are working with smaller pieces or as you want to. So now I'm just going to cut this into a 3.5-inch square. So there's my first one. Let me pick out some more. So what do you do when you only have smaller pieces? Let's find some of those. Okay, so here's a fun blue, and here's a piece of linen. So since I have this piece still, let's see if that's big enough. Just barely. Then let me make a piece out of this too. Cut a straight edge on it, and let's see if I can make this work. If I put these two together like this, I'm going to try to purposefully not match the seams up here because I want this one to be a little bit wonkier. Okay, now let's see how I can fit my 3.5-inch square here. This little bit of selvage is okay because it's going to be inside of a seam allowance. And there's my second Wonky Four square. Four patch, what do you call them? Okay, so now I have these scraps, and not all of these are big enough for me to keep anymore. So here's a whole pile I'm eliminating now from my bin. These I can keep for future little blocks. Okay, so I'm going to keep going in this fashion. And as I go, I'm going to take out any fabrics that I just don't like. If I think it's ugly, it is out of here. Okay, this one I can make maybe angled. That would be interesting. Fun. Wow, I think this bin is fuller than my other one was. Or maybe I'm imagining that. Okay, here I have a skinny piece. So I need to match that with a bigger piece, or I can match it with two bigger pieces. So if I have this and I have this, I'm going to put this one here, and I'm going to find a different one, also larger, to put here. And then I'm going to sew both of these to this piece like this. And I still need to make 3 straight edges at least. So there's 1, there's 2, and here's 3. Now I can flip one, and I can overlap them using my 3.5-inch guide to make sure that I'm going to have enough of this little blue fabric in the block still, and sew them together like this. And cut my 3.5-inch block. Okay, so I'm just going to keep going in this fashion and see how many I can get. I made 50 of the green and yellows. What I love about how this is turning out is that because I store them in 2 colors instead of 1 color, and they're in colors that are like next to each other on the color wheel, they're turning out to be like very sort of color coordinated, and I think as a whole quilt they're going to look so cool. My plan is to do either a denim or a gingham 1-inch sashing, I think. And in order to do that, I think I need 200 blocks. So I'm making 50 blocks out of each bin, because I also have a bin of neutrals, and then I'm going to combine that with the multicolored fabric stash that I have in there. They don't have a bin, they're just in the leftover corner of the drawer. So that is my plan, and we will see how it goes. But for now, let me just keep making blocks. I like to dig through and find my favorites. Okay, I'm a little over halfway. I have 29. It is still the same day and I worked for an hour and a half, 2 hours maybe. As I go through this process, I try to mix up my scrap bin every now and then so that I'm getting to the different fabrics at the bottom. And I'm also going through and removing anything that's just too small to be usable, or in like a weird shape that is not gonna be usable, or honestly anything that I just don't like anymore that I think is ugly. If I don't like it, I'm never gonna bother putting it in anything. So those are two things I'm kind of paying attention to as I go. You may notice I have a new mini iron. My friend Connie gave this to me. It's Oliso. Fancy. And it was just in time because I ruined my previous mini iron. Thankfully it wasn't like a nice and expensive one. They don't have it anymore anyway. So I couldn't link anybody to it, whoever asked. So I accidentally put a bag of like polyfill stuffing next to it and it like melted all over the mini iron. So this is super nice. For a long time I was really skeptical of Oliso because they were going after sewing influencers pretty hard. They never offered one to me. But you know, whenever something like that takes off because people are receiving it for free, I always am skeptical that it's actually good. But this is legitimately really good compared to my old one, my cheapo one. These are a little bit pricey. I think the average cost is like 60 bucks. Although Michael's seems to have one for 45. And the designer ones, like the Tula Pink one, is $85 for the mini iron. So anyway, my friend Connie had one and she didn't use it, so she gave it to me. Thank you, Connie, because I am really enjoying this. It gets way hotter than my last one. And I like that you can just put it down on this little mat. It's not intended to be set up like this really every time. So it's cool. I recommend it. I was not paid to say that. Once I made 40, I felt like I wasn't making any dent in that bin, so I went through the bin and I wanted to make sure I wasn't missing any really good fabrics at the bottom, and I went through it and I weeded out everything that was just not really usable for anything, much less for this. And so that made it a little bit easier, and I actually was making a huge dent in the bin, so I scrapped anything that was too small to ever use for anything, or that was like a bias triangle or something. Or this bin was harder because I used it the blues so much for my fish quilt that a lot of them were cut in really curvy shapes. But I was able to get rid of a lot of those in these blocks, so this is really working. So now I'm gonna use this little pile I pulled out to make the remaining 10 blue blocks. I finished all 50. I just started yesterday. I don't honestly know how long it took me. Something about this is so fun. I think part of it too is seeing the scraps get under control and like looking forward to my bin starting from a more simple place now. So are you ready to see the bin? I hope you remember what it looked like before, but this is my blue bin now. Blue and purple. This is all that's left. It's still a good amount, so I still have scraps to grab when I need them. I noticed I ironed what was left too, because that helps it just be prettier. And I also noticed as I was ironing that I have a lot of strips. So now that I know that, I can plan like a book sleeve with strip piecing or something like that. Or the mason jar cozies are good for strip piecing. So that'll be a good way to use up some more of this if I want to use up the strips. So now I'm on to the pinks. I'm very excited about how this is going to look. I hope you're inspired to do something similar. It's very simple. I hope you saw me in the tutorial put together enough blocks to sort of see how they're done. You do not need to fussy cut any squares or shapes beforehand. All you really need is a straight edge to sew onto another straight edge. Do that twice and sew them together. And also, some of them are like a traditional 2-fabric 4-patch, but a lot of them are not. So don't feel like they all need to be like this. They can be 4 different fabrics. They can be 3 different fabrics, like this. So if you make something like this, be sure and post a picture in the communities tab. Did you know that you can now post to the communities tab? A lot of people have posted there and I'm really excited about that. So my next task after I finish this quilt top, which at this rate won't be long, I have some plans for using up some of my larger pieces, because whenever it gets to be like this where I have a hard time squeezing in something new, it's time for me to go through and use some up. And so I have had a request from my art teacher to make something specific to sell in his shop, and that will be next week's video. So I will see you then. Bye.